In this video, we're talking about building a sentence in the SAT writing test. So the important parts of a sentence that everyone has to know is that every grammatically correct sentence in the English language includes both a subject and a conjugated verb that corresponds to the subject. So a sentence with just a subject and a verb are called simple sentences. Now sentences can have much more or much less than that. However, sentences with just those two factors are called simple sentences. Now, an easy example of a simple sentence I can give you is the cat eats. Now, you can see this is a simple sentence because we just have one, the subject, and two, the verb, the cat and eats. There's only those two, and there's no interconnecting words, so that would be considered a simple sentence. Now, an important thing to remember about sentences in the SAT writing section is that sentences can be considered grammatically correct so long as they contain both a subject and a verb. Now, importantly, this means that sentences do not need to make sense out of context. If you take a sentence by itself and it has that verb, it has that subject, that can still be considered a sentence whether or not it makes sense out of context. Now, let's practice the use of these in the question below. In the decades since Armstrong retired from performing, his fame has continued to grow. Jazz fans and scholars now unanimously consider him one of the greatest jazz musicians of the 20th century. Many consider him to be among the greatest jazz musicians of all time. Now, let's think about this for a little bit. Clearly, there's some sort of break in the sentence or creation of a new clause, whether independent or dependent. So we can get rid of be right off the bat. Not using any sort of interconnective punctuation between century and many creates a run-on sentence that is just too long, and clearly there's supposed to be some sort of connector between century and that many consider statement. Now, we have to consider what is going on here. Commas are used to separate an independent and dependent clause, but actually, many consider, even though we don't have the context, is still a sentence. Many is the subject, and consider is the verb. So we can get rid of A as a potential option. Now we have two options left, C with a period and D with a semicolon. Now, there are two independent clauses here, so a semicolon could be grammatically correct. However, in this context, not only would that create a sentence that is exceedingly long, but they're not so close that they need to be connected anyway. So the most likely option is going to be C, and that would be your correct answer.